Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. And on this very special second part of discussion points this week, I'm joined by not one, not two, but three players from the Canberra City Championships that took place over the weekend. First of all, we have first place finisher Shane Quinn. Welcome.
Hi.
Second place finisher Nathan Yuen.
Hey.
And third place finisher Ruben Cortez. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. We're going to chat this evening with you guys, mostly about the meta of the event that you guys are at, the decks that you played, the meta that you guys are expecting, and sort of your plans for the rest of the season and where we hope to go to for the rest of the season. I want to start with you, Shane. First of all, congratulations on the win. Could you tell our audience what deck you were playing?
I was playing Gallade Octillery.
Fantastic. And with the Gallade Octillery deck, I interviewed Andrew last week, and we had a chat on our episode about the goals of the deck and what matchups he thought were strong with it. Is there a particular reason that you brought Gallade Octillery to this event?
Basically, I thought there'd be a hell of a lot of Manectric and stuff running around. I didn't think people would be too into running like Vesperquin Vileplume and stuff. And the deck really handles Manectric and Night March quite easily with Focus Sash and that sort of stuff. Like pulls ahead of anything playing Shaman towards the end of the game. So basically I expected those two, a bit of Entei as well, and it just seems to do really well against all three of those. So I brought it in to give it a go.
Fantastic. And Nathan, to you now. Could you tell our audience what deck you were playing, please?
I played Entei Charizard.
And Entei Charizard, I have yet to chat to someone on discussion points about Entei Charizard. However, I have a testing partner here in Brisbane named Blake Davies, who has been playing the deck a lot at multiple city championships, doing quite well. Could you tell me why it was that you decided to bring Entei to this event and what specific advantages you thought it might have against the field?
I just brought it in because it's nice and fast and consistent, and it hits like a truck. I brought it in because I was expecting, a lot of Yveltal. Well, I wasn't really expecting it myself, but I was told to expect it from from a couple of friends. But just the threat of hitting 170 on turn 1 is quite good.
Yeah.
I mean, I did it to a couple of people that day. They were quite salty.
Absolutely. And Ruben, I believe that you bought a similar list to Nathan on this day. Could you let our audience know what deck you were playing?
Yeah, I also played Entei Charizard.
And once again, the same sort of question for you. Is there a specific matchup in the field that you thought would be prevalent that Entei has an advantage over?
Well, I thought the format was going to be a bit of both of YCG, or Yveltal Zoroark Gallade for some people don't know what it stands for, and Vesperquin Night March. So I really thought that it's going to be heavy on those parts. So hitting the 130s, killing the baby Yveltals, and then the 170s on the Yveltal EXs, and just using Flame Screen against the Night March Vesperquin deck, just one-shotting each of those with the Assault Vest. So I thought that's going to be the format, so that's why I prepared for it with this deck.
Obviously, all three of you guys were placed very strongly at this city championships, and you've had a couple of weeks now to look at the meta develop, and unfortunately, you guys did not. Well, you guys were playing during the Melbourne Double, where there were quite a lot of people at both events. I think about 100 for total for the two events. This question is to all three of you. Feel free to chime in whenever you want. But what was the meta you were expecting in Canberra?
I think he's talking to you.
Anybody.
Okay, fine. Like, as I was saying before, I thought we'd hit tons of Manectric and Entei would be the thing. I was going to play Yveltal Zoroark Gallade until about 3 days before the event, because I did about 4 games of testing with it, and that seemed pretty good. But then it just, all these different niche decks just give it such poor matchups, apart from, all its really strong ones across the board, so I bailed. So I didn't think people were going to really go for that, but I thought it'd just be like Night March, Entei, Manectric, and that's basically what it was. It was like decks across the board, and then I don't know, like 4 or 5 NTs and stuff, and that's like half the field already.
Yeah. And Nathan, this is a question for you. Now,
Yep.
playing during the day, obviously you would have played 5 rounds of Swiss as well as top
6 rounds.
6 rounds of Swiss as well as top
Yep.
8, top 4, and the finals, of course. Is there any deck that you saw that you weren't expecting?
Apart from just the random opponent I faced round 1, playing Pyro or Talent Flame, everything was pretty standard for the metagame. Like, there weren't really any surprises.
Okay. And Ruben, for you now, against which one of these two was your top 4 opponent?
Shane.
Shane. And do you think that that matchup, the Entei versus Gallade Octillery matchup, is that quite difficult for you? Do you think?
At first, I didn't think it was, but then when the focus sashes came in, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be a really hard matchup for me. So, first round, I tried out the flame screen tactic, and obviously that didn't really work too well because it was just too slow. Shane and Gallade just wrecked me after that. So the second game, I guess I was forced to go for that route because I didn't really start well, but I came in a bit later, so I got a few prizes up. But then started one-shotting a few Gallades and try to aim for the Gallades without the special energy. So I have the Assault Vest to help me guard against the one-shots. But I just knew it was just too much of a matchup for me, and I just couldn't keep up with it.
And another question for all of you. This is a question that I've been meaning to ask some players from different cities. Do you feel that there is a specific card in the format right now that is really good but is underplayed? Anyone can answer this one.
Giratina.
Giratina?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually would agree, Giratina. No one played it.
One
Canberra
random did.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, one random case did. I think he made top 8 or something. Don't know what his name was.
The only player to
that
play
one guy,
Giratina
yeah.
down in Melbourne won the second Melbourne Cities.
Aaron Van der Colt.
Aaron Van der Kolk won the second Melbourne Cities on day 2 with Giratina Seismitoad.
Yeah.
What I'm leaning towards, in my opinion, is Startling Megaphone. It's a card that is cut from a lot of decks and that hasn't been very popular in decks for a long time. Do you this question is for any of you guys. Do you think there is a specific reason why we haven't seen more Startling Megaphone with the prevalence of Focus Sash, Assault Vest, and Muscle Band Floatstone even in almost every tier 1 top tier deck that's out at the moment?
I can answer that. The meta, as it started, didn't really have too many tools that are very critical to discard, and most decks have a way of basically one-shotting over Assault Vest anyway. But Gallade sort of exploits a niche in the format where it basically targets Shaman down and uses Focus Sash to get around it, and it's because people play a lot of Shaman for draw power to run their decks physically, as well as like they just don't run Megaphone for Focus Sash. So we're just sort of in that phase of the meta where people are going to start putting it back in because it wasn't necessary before, but it's transitioning to the point where they need it now to beat stuff like Sash. But again, the one Megaphone isn't enough to take down multiple Sashes because you just drop them one at a time. So they're going to need stuff like Zerosic to back it as well. So a lot of decks just don't want to run it because of the space for all their trainer item drawer and stuff.
We're at a point in the meta at the moment where we have quite a large number of sets in the standard format, and we're seeing more and more cards, more and more trainers in particular being released that are quite core to a lot of decks. We're seeing more supporters come in, more trainers that are going to be put in high counts. Nathan, do you think that with the addition of cards like Assault Vest, even cards like Parallel City, do you think that it's making deck building more interesting, or do you think that it's making it worse?
It makes it harder to decide on a final 60 card list because there's just so many one-offs that you want in the deck, but you just can't find the space for. and if you do make the space for it, you're taking away from consistency. Sorry, from consistency in other areas. Look, there were quite a few cards I wanted in my Entei list, but I just couldn't find the space to fit them in.
If you all had one extra card in your list, Shane's, Gallade, and both of your Entei decks, what is the 61st card you would put in? Ruben, let's start with you.
I have to be Parallel City after what I faced against Shane. stops the shaman that shaman killing. Shane will explain what I mean about that a bit later when he gets there. Surprise, surprise.
Shane?
Town
Hammer?
Should have played Town
Nathan, how about you?
Catcher, just looking off of what Ruben did with his deck, I really liked his inclusion of Catcher. It's a very proactive card that could just crush your opponent.
Those were my next questions for each of you. I would like to ask you about one specific facet of each of your decks. And Ruben, my question to you was about the Catcher. Did you find it useful in your deck, especially during the day? I know that it can come in quite clutch.
Well, I found the use extremely useful because when I was testing it with my good friend Robin Vu, who is new to the competitive scene, she played casually in the past. I was testing it against her with the Vespercoin Night March deck, and there was a few times in the deck that I felt like I can't. Every time she's one-shotting me back because I keep whiffing the Assault Vest, and I can't Lysandre to get her Bronzongs, or I can't get her Vesperquins, or I can't get anything that's on the bench because I have the Blacksmith, so I can continue on with the killing of a deck. So I included Pokemon Catcher to see how it goes, and a lot of the times it just pretty much got me the flips that I needed to get the heads for the to get all the bench Pokemon I needed, like especially Shaman for the game winning kills when I need it. During the tournament, it was really helpful, like getting the Shaman kills. It actually helped me a lot against the Mega Manectric matchup, especially when just one-shotting the Manectrics. Like, I just Blacksmith turn 1 with a DCA, 2 Muscle Band, Pokemon Catcher, bring up the Manectric kill. Prevents them from getting to the Mega Manectric, because I feel that Mega Manectric is not a bad matchup, but it's just difficult to kill since it's two-shotting every time.
And Shane, the inclusion or the exclusion in your deck that I'd like to talk about is the fact that you played no Shaman in your list. Is there a specific reason as to why you felt like Shaman, aside from, of course, the Abyssal Draw ability of Artillery, that you thought Shaman wasn't necessary in your list?
Yeah, like the entire point of the deck is to make them run through 150 HP Gallades the entire game. So if you put Shamans down, it just shortens the game too much, because the deck against, like, say, the Night March matchup or the really quick decks that run off those Shaman draws, they're going to outspeed you. So you just sort of try and sack 1 or 2 prizes early, and then, you know, you'll have bridgeted it out turn 1 or 2, get your Karinas out for Candy Gallade, and then you start putting sashes down to slow the prize trade down and then push it back in your favor by killing Shamans. So by putting in, like, bench CXs and stuff, it just totally destroys that game plan. So you might sort of draw poorly on the first turn or 2 without, but like you put in multiple Bridgets and Trainer's Mail to just try and thin the deck as quickly as possible, and then just once a single Galley comes out, you just explode. So you don't really need the Shaman beyond there.
And Nathan, my question for you is about your choice of stadium in the deck. A lot of Entei players have shied away, not from stadiums, but from the inclusion of Scorched Earth in favor of cards like Parallel City and even cards like Silent Lab that disrupt the opponent's side of the field. Is there a particular reason why you felt like Scorched Earth was a good inclusion, aside from the obvious synergy with Blacksmith?
It's more of a better counter stadium than anything, really. You know, you don't want Mega Manectrics having a what's that stadium called?
Rough
Seas.
Rough Seas.
Rough Seas, that's the one. You don't want them having one of those on the field where you're trying to 2-shot them and they heal at a 2-shot range. So bouncing their stadiums more often was the use of my stadiums rather than to draw.
Fantastic. Guys, a few more questions for each of you. I want to chat to you all about your plans for the rest of the season. Obviously, we have no events coming up this weekend with pre-releases. But the following weekend, you guys have an event in Sydney, as you are all Sydney locals. What are you guys, each of you, I'll go one by one, what are you expecting from the Sydney meta as local players? Do you think there's going to be any significant swings in the metagame based on the results of Melbourne and Canberra over the last weekend? Ruben, I'll start with you.
Well, I think there's gonna probably for the newer players, maybe for some that, well, I don't want to say that they can't afford it, but for the ones that just want to get like a really cheaper deck, like Best Book of Night would probably be coming up. For the other players that, after seeing top places, I guess Artillery Gallade will be another deck that could rise. Due to the former national champion Andrew Tan and Shane Quinn, who also was high up in the rankings from APAC, has won tournaments with the two. So I wouldn't say it's more of an influence, but it's something that they think it's a good idea to use, because since it has a very good matchup, like against Ante, YCG, and Electric. So I guess that I'll probably see a bit of that on the rise.
And Shane, obviously, as the pilot of the Gallade Artillery deck that went to first place, do you think that your result may encourage people to try the deck out and to bring the deck to the City Championships in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think so. Like, it's cheap to build. It can be a little bit difficult to build, but there's lists out there online and stuff that are pretty easily accessible. But after seeing it sort of sweep the tournament, from first seed in Top Cut, people are bound to at least test it and possibly play it, because it has such polarizing matchups across the board, and there's not a lot of stuff that really counters it that's really played at the moment.
And Nathan, in the same vein as the question for the other two, do you think that Ente's popularity is going to increase, decrease, or stay roughly the same based on the results that we've seen? We've seen it, I believe, has now top-8'd 5 events, 5 out of the 7 events that we've had so far. Do you think that's a sign that the deck is going to continually gain in popularity, or do you think it's probably right about the amount of people that should be playing it right now?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I'm not really good with this predicting metagame stuff. I leave that to other people.
Sure.
But just looking at the results that it's achieved over the past few weeks, you can clearly see that it is consistent and that it can win games, not so much tournaments. So yeah, I do think people would flock to it. Well, not flock, but people would gravitate towards it at some point because it's just consistent.
And another question for you guys about about events in the future. How many events are each of you guys planning to travel to for the rest of the season? Is there going to be a case where you guys are doing all the regionals? Are you going to be doing the remainder of the cities that you can handle? I know there's going to be a double cities in Sydney over the Valentine's Day weekend. I'm sure you guys hopefully you'll be playing in that. But are you guys planning on traveling much for the rest of the season, making trips down to Melbourne, perhaps Adelaide, up to Brisbane, anything like that, Shane?
Well, like last year I went to all of the regionals and I hit Auckland as well, so I hit like 8 regionals. If I can do that this year, then I probably will, permitting clashes and work and, real life stuff. But, it sort of depends on how I do in cities. There's another 4 cities I'm planning to go to in like the Sydney, Newcastle region. If I haven't hit my best finish limit from there, I'll consider flying out for another one. But I mean, it's only like 50 points for a win, so I'll probably give it a miss. But regionals, for the point value on it, if I'm in range of chasing APAC, then I'll probably go to as many as I can.
And Ruben, how about you? Are you planning on doing all the regionals?
Wouldn't say all the regionals, but then again, from what Shane said, depending on how well I'll go. Since it is a start, like I have been aiming to go for Apex since the end of the season. But I just wanted to see how I go to start off with the cities, because last couple of seasons I wasn't too confident in myself. this year I feel that I have grown as a player, and now I'm a bit more confident in my playing ability with the skill in this game, and I feel I can when I try, and I hopefully don't misplay anything. I reckon I can make it, but it is a difficult road to make APAC, as many people would know. But I am hoping to travel to most regionals. I won't guarantee it will be all of them though, but I will try my best to get to most of them.
Fantastic. And Nathan, how about you? I know you just got through saying that you're not much for predicting meta games and you're not much for planning ahead, but is doing a lot of the regionals something that you are going to be planning on doing this season?
Absolutely not.
No.
I am notoriously lazy when it comes to traveling for Pokemon events.
Mm.
I only ever really go to Canberra and New South Wales events, barring nationals. So I won't be interstate.
Fair enough. Just one more question for each of you guys. Now, I did ask this to the few guests that I have had on, but is there a deck in the current format that you have played, or maybe you haven't played yet? Maybe you've seen someone playing it that you thought that you'd really like to try out, that you think would be really good, but you haven't quite had a chance yet to give it a go. For example, Andrew Tan, when I had a chat to him, he said that a deck he would really like to try is Empoleon Seismitoad. So any deck that you can think of that you may have seen around, you may have seen do well in some events overseas, perhaps in America, perhaps in the UK. We'll start with Ruben.
Does it also include the next set to like breakpoints in the future?
Well, I suppose that we are going to have Breakpoint in about 3 weeks from now is going to be legal. So are there cards in the new set that you're going to be interested in?
The two decks I'm looking to play the most from the next set out of those cards, because I tried out most of the decks from this format, so I pretty much, as all the other three know, that I'm comfortable with Entei the most. But for next set, I guess the two decks I'm looking to make is Trevenant Break and Mega Scizor.
Shane, is there a particular deck in this format, or perhaps a future format, if you have had a chance to look at it, that you haven't played yet that you'd quite like to?
I don't know, like, as far as this format goes, anything I've been interested in, I've just sort of tested at League. Like, even at League, I was playing stuff like Noivern and Mega Rayquaza, the Dragon Descent one. So, I've done all that sort of stuff. But as far as Breakpoint goes, just want to make Deluge work, so I'm going to try Magnezone. But, we'll see. Stage 2's totally worked with Gallade, though, so maybe...
And Nathan, how about you? Is there a deck that you've seen, or perhaps that you might have tried that you really like the look of?
I'm just going to echo Shane's sentiment and say I want to play Magnezone. Because, I started the game with Blastoise and did alright with it. And I'll just get back to where I started.
For days.
That's it. Do you guys feel like there's a specific card or set of cards in the Breakpoint set that really benefits Magnezone?
Puzzle love
time. Puzzle time.
It's a fantastic card. I'm going to be doing a top 10 set review with Anthony, hopefully by the end of this week, and we're going to be discussing Puzzle of Time in depth. I want to thank you guys very much for giving me your time this evening. It's very, very nice to chat to all of you, catch up with some friends from down south. Is there any shout outs or anything you guys would like to say before we finish off this evening?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Paul Coletta, who was my round 6 opponent. He basically scooped to get me into cut and get both of us into cut, and he gave me a lot of advice on my deck, as did Shane Quinn, whoever that is. And also to my girlfriend, who took my shifts at work so I could go to play card games.
Well, make sure you send this to her when it's done. You get some brownie points.
Yeah, we'll do.
I want to give a shout out to Paul as well, because, like, dude played with a broken arm, and I know how that's like. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. And John Blair as well, he sort of put me onto the idea of Gallade Auxiliary when I sort of initially dismissed it. So without him, I probably wouldn't have played it either and had 50 points.
Ruben, how about you?
For me, well, I guess my confidence at the beginning of the year was pretty low. So I want to thank the whole group, including Shane and Nathan. They all have been there for me the whole time. In playtesting, I want to thank, well, again, Robin Boo, a player who is new to the competitive scene, and also Joel's, the Sydney judge's girlfriend. She helped me playtest, even though she asked me to help her playtest. But just really getting to learn more of the NT deck and just getting more confidence out of it from learning it. It just helped me a lot. And without it, I don't think I would have made top 4 in Canberra.
Fantastic, guys. Paul, I drafted onto my AceTrainer draft team this year, so I'm fantastic to hear that he's been such a help, and congratulations on your top 8 as well, Paul. Alright, guys, that wraps us up for today. Thank you very much for watching Discussion Points, and thank you once again to my guests for joining me. I've been Bodhi, and I'll chat to you guys later on. Thanks very much.
Bye, Alice.
Bye, Alice.
Bye.